I'd like to welcome everyone out tonight. We'll have Mark Teshukin from Lewis Palmer Elementary School start us off.
Good evening. I would like to call the meeting to order. Please take roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Lawson?
Here.
Mr. Plouffe?
Here.
Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Ms. Upchurch?
Here.
Thank you. And one question for you, Mark. What is this hardware that you have there?
This is my word that I got from chess tournament. I got 4th place in 3rd grade against a lot of people.
Excellent. Well, thanks for helping us out. Now, I actually asked Mark if he wanted to conduct the rest of the meeting for me tonight, and he respectfully declined. To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to Board Docs website can be found via D38 website, www.lewispalmer.org, on the Board of Education/meeting webpage. We'll now be privileged to have a patriotic performance by Palmer Lake Elementary School. And would you like us to stand for that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. Okay, do we have a Boy Scout or a Cub Scout in this group? Boy Scouts? Boy Scouts? Okay. Do we have any Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or Cub Scouts in the audience? If we have one, if you'd come forward, please. All right. All right, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I neglected to recognize one individual. We have Miss Sherry Hawkins standing in the back, one of our former board members and board presidents that contributed many years for District 38. So thanks for being with us this evening, Ms. Hawkins. Per board policy BEDH, public participation at school board meetings, there is one time for the public comment, and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent upon the number of people who sign up, with the entire public comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 or fewer people sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments will be available at 5 p.m. in the Learning Center meeting room. All speakers will be asked to limit their remarks to the time allotted on the total number of speakers not to exceed 3 minutes per person. If a group of people have a similar concern, the board requests that a spokesperson for that group be selected. The board respects the right of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticism of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising staff, then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address personnel issues publicly, please understand the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event that the affected employee believe that the comments about them violate legal standards. Lastly, keep in mind we have K through 12 students in the audience. Please keep all comments appropriate to our audience. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Namika?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Poff.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Next, we'll be privileged to have a demonstration of learning from Palmer Lake Elementary School. Where's Ms. Greben now at? There you are, Peggy.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. So this year we implemented a program called Responsive Classroom, and that involves, our biggest focus has been on what's called a morning meeting. Its purpose is to develop community connections with the kids who are in our class. And Mrs. Rappaport, who is a 4th grade teacher at Palmer Lake Elementary, leads our responsive classroom leadership team. We sent teachers over the summer to attend training, and so they in turn train the staff and then work with students on their morning meeting. And so you are going to have the privilege of having 4 of our 4th graders from Mrs. Rappaport's class lead you in what's called a morning meeting. And there are 4 parts to the morning meeting. Are you guys talking about that, or are you not talking about it? Okay. So it starts out with a greeting. There is a message, there's an activity, there's a share. And we feel like all those pieces are important in the morning meeting because of the sense of community that it develops. But before they do the morning meeting, we're going to front load this a little bit for you and show you a video of morning meetings across our building.
Friend, oh friend, how do you do? Both my hands I give to you, round and round and round again. Now, I'm sorry. It worked moments ago. Yes.
Do you want to try a functionality and then do split screen or duplicate screen?
Friend, oh friend, how do you do? Both my hands I give to you, round and round and round again. Now we'll find another friend. All right, and turn your eye.
May you have auspiciousness and causes of success. May you have the confidence to always do your best. May you take no effort in your being generous, sharing what you can, nothing more, nothing less. May you know the meaning of the word happiness. May you always lead from the beating in your chest. May you be treated like an esteemed guest. May you get to rest, may you catch your breath. May the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Whoa. May the road less paved be the road that you follow. Whoa. Well, here's to the hearts that you're gonna break. Here's to the lives that you're gonna change. Here's to the infinite possible ways to love you. I want you to have it. Here's to the good times we're gonna have. You don't need money, you got a free pass. Here's to the fact that I'd be sad without you. I want you to have it all. 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 May you be as fascinating as a slap bracelet. May you keep the chaos and the clutter off your desk. May you have unquestionable health and less stress. Having no possessions though immeasurable wealth. May you get a gold star on your next test. May your educated guesses always be correct. And may you win prizes shining like diamonds. May you really own it each moment to the next. May the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Whoa. May the road less paved be the road that you follow. Oh. Well, here's to the hearts that you're gonna break. Here's to the lives that you're gonna change. Here's to the infinite possible ways to love you. I want you to have it. Here's to the good times we're gonna have. You don't need money, you got a free pass. Here's to the fact that I'll be sad without you. I want you to have it all. All you can imagine. Oh, no matter what your path is, if you believe it, then anything can happen. Go, 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 raise your glasses. Go, 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 you can have it. Oh, I toast you. Here's to the hearts that you're gonna break. Here's to the lives that you're gonna change. Here's to the infinite possible ways to love you. You to have it. Here's to the good times we're gonna have. You don't need money, you got a free pass. Here's to the fact that I'll be sad.
Making a purple soup. Whip, 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 whip. We're making a purple soup. Shooby-dooby-doo with purple potatoes and purple tomatoes. And we want you.
Come on up, don't be shy. Nobody that wants to join us.
Let's see, it must be morning, so.
Yeah. I promise your meeting will be better because of this meeting. Okay, you guys ready to get in the circle? Why are you guys mix
We want
it?
to double?
Yeah, mix the thing, but we do need a circle. We do need a circle, and you might need to help them with your names when we get to our greeting part, okay? Okay, so the first part of morning meeting is our greeting, and we know it's important to use names, to smile, and to make eye contact. So that's our all you have to have is your math word, and you have to remember what the person before you said.
Oh, that's it?
You're going to repeat it.
I thought I was going to have to do them all.
No, just go with the person before you said. Okay, you ready? Ready. Mac protractor. Vertex. And your new word.
Goodbye. I thought we were going that way.
Okay, here we go. Oh, wait, what did you say?
Have.
Divide multiplier. Division integral.
Section 5.
I was going to do calculus.
Last one, you're almost done.
Calculus, geometry.
Yeah, you did it. Awesome.
Apple, she said pie, he said apple. Oh, man, that is awesome. You should have said cobbler. We would have had it.
Thank you for joining us for morning meeting. I asked their favorite, what their favorite part of morning meeting was, and they said, it's a great start to the day. What did you say? You like to hear people share. They brought their autism going on. It was fun. Yeah, absolutely. I'll introduce them. So we have Macy Sinkowski, Dylan Stricker, Adam Smoen, and Reese Lee. Thank you for being good supporters.
Stand. Great minds think alike, both on calculus.
Thank you again for that presentation. We'll next have student recognition of the chess tournament winners. Steve, where are you at? All right.
Come on up, everyone. Come on. Good evening. I'm Steve Waldman, and this last Saturday we had the 13th annual Lewis Palmer School District Chess Tournament. So we had 117 chess players play. I think it's the second largest school district chess tournament in the state. And the kids play 4 rounds, and it teaches, we stress good sportsmanship. And the kids learn how to win and how to lose, and how to concentrate and how to behave in a large setting and how to compete. And every year it turns out just really great. And it's because of all the helpers we have to do this. We have a lot of people pitch in to make it work. We had my right-hand person this year was Nancy Roberts. She's the GT teacher at Palmer Lake Elementary School. She did all the organization, and without her help, it would have been a catastrophe. Also, I had Cindy Waldman, who's the reading interventionist at Bear Creek Elementary School. She helped out. We had Anita Shue, who's the gifted teacher from Bear Creek Elementary School. We had Mr. Peter Weiss over here. He's the 6th grade teacher from Prairie Winds Elementary School. Mr. Weiss is just, he was a referee, and when kids would have a problem, they'd raise your hands, and Mr. Weiss would come in and try and mediate the issue. And he did an excellent job at that. Also, I'd like to give a special thanks to the custodian at Lewis Palmer Elementary School, Jason Holland. He is such a help every year, and he just goes above and beyond to help us out. And then finally, we had some Key Club kids from Palmer Ridge High School and Lewis Palmer High School. They are just a great asset, and they are so positive and so helpful to the little kids. It was just wonderful. And then one final thing, I'd like to thank Miss Sherry Hawkins and her family. They were helpful at the tournament too. We have a little bit of a slide here. Let me show you what happened at the tournament here. Let's see how that goes. So this is before we first got started. And there are all the kids. Mr. Weiss was giving them direction on what was going to happen. So we had the kids sitting at the tables, and then we had the parents around the outside, and we kind of enforced the parents to just to sit on the outside and watch, not get involved. That way, if the kids had any problems, any issues in the game, they're supposed to try and work out the issue with their opponent, and if they can't, then they raise their hand and the referee comes and tries to mediate it. And there's Mr. Weiss giving some more direction on chess moves. This was John Petcher. He's a chess player at the senior center next to Lewis Palmer High School. He comes there, and he was also one of our referees. So it's good to have help from the community do this. There's me. And there's the kids playing. So we started at 9 and we ended at 2 o'clock. There's some more pictures of kids playing. We had kindergartners through high schoolers play. And the kindergartners did pretty good this year. So before they start their game, they have to shake their opponent's hand, and afterwards, they also shake their opponent's hand and congratulate them on a good game played. There's the Key Club kids there. Okay, and so now I'd like to introduce the kids, and when I go ahead and come over this way, over here, and face them, and when I announce your name, go ahead and raise your hand so they know who you are. First, in kindergarten, we had first place from Palmer Lake Elementary School. We had Neil Warkin. We did not have any first graders this year, but in second grade, in third place from Palmer Lake Elementary School, we had Terrence Warkin. Again, in second grade, in sixth place, we had Jack Buckheit from Bear Creek Elementary School. Excuse me. In third grade, we had Mark Dokushkin from Lewis Palmer Elementary School. In fifth grade, we had, in first place, we had Luke Akapanti from Prairie Winds Elementary School. In second place, we had Brian Hawkins from Palmer Lake Elementary School. In third place, we had Maxwell Harcrow from Prairie Winds Elementary School. In sixth grade, we had Braden Fieber. He's third place from Prairie Winds Elementary School. In sixth place, we had Liam McJoint from Prairie Winds Elementary School. In middle school, we had Heather Hawkins, fourth place from Lewis Palmer Middle School. And in high school, first place winner, the second year in a row he's won, is Billy Dillard from Lewis Palmer High School. So we hope to do it next year and continue on as long as we can go. So I really appreciate the board letting us do this every year. It just brings a lot of happiness, and it's just an enjoyable thing. So I thank you for your support.
Hey, Steve, would you mind getting your students together along with Mr. Wise? And parents, if you want to come up here and take pictures, please feel free to do so.
Excuse me, I forgot to mention River Parr. He got first place. And then we have Graceland Kaj, fourth place in sixth grade also.
Kathy, go take the sheet back, please. Go take the sheet back, please.
So, little kids over front.
Take it back.
See where all the cameras are? Over there. Look at all the cameras. Look at the cameras. Everybody look. If you can't see the camera, we can see you. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Carr, can we turn a few minutes over to you?
Can I have Andy come up? So we are here to recognize this young lady, Annie Marie Ackerman, who is definitely one of our best and brightest in the community. And this recognition just demonstrates why. Annie is a recipient this year of a merit-based award from the United States Senate Youth Program. The award is given out to 2 students in each of the 50 states as well as the District of Columbia. And on top of being able to spend a week in the Senate, March 2nd through the 9th, they also receive a sizable scholarship. So, Annie, no pressure, but some of the previous award recipients include Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado, Senator Susan Collins from Maine, and former Governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. So, congratulations, Annie.
So if the Congress is shut down, are you going to negotiate that? We're get them back open?
Now that'd be nice if I had to say that.
Thank you, Amy.
If you could do it on the phone, that'd be great.
I know that technology stuff is kind of...
All right, next agenda item is National School Board Member Month.
I think you have received most of your recognition. We just wanted to leave this place in case anyone wanted to come and say anything, but I think they've provided you with all of their appreciation, and it's really month of January, but we extended it to February since our meeting happened pretty quickly after the break. We wanted to give everyone plenty of time, but know that people really appreciate the work that you do, and I think you'll find that in all of the different things that they provided for you. So, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Ms. Broft. All right, the next agenda item is the board member comments.
Oh, I think you've skipped a bunch.
Public comments.
Public comments, you're right. There's just one individual signed up, Ms. Susanna McGurkum.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne McGarrico, and I am a community member, have been for about 25 years. Also a teacher at Lewis Palmer Middle School at 8th grade, American History. And more specifically, my team, my 8 Blue team, was recently notified that one of us might be moving out into the portables, which will be installed later this year at the middle school. So I'm fully invested in the decisions you'll be making this evening, and I just wanted to come forward and really just ask very plainly, please put this bond issue back on the ballot this fall. I think that many will argue different things with you. They will come back to you and say, well, the numbers aren't showing this. I will tell you, living in the middle school, we are at about 890 some students, and it's a lot of things. It's the crowds in the hallways. It's the fact that we can't get electives for all the kids, their first or second or third choices even. It's the fact that we've lost our staff lounge and have had the principal have to move his location of his office just so that we can make his office a conference room, because the conference room now became 2 offices. It's the fact that we have no staff bathroom in the upstairs anymore because we've repurposed that facility so that we have staff members who literally cannot take a bathroom break in between classes because it requires them going to another floor and they can't make it back in time. So it's those kinds of things that portables will not help. And so I'm asking that you please do this and that we make it better this time, that we do a better job of communicating with our community what our need really is. Thank you.
Before I call the next person, the sheet got pulled a little bit early. Is there anyone else that would like to add their name to this? Okay. Mr. Terry Miller?
Hi, I'd just like to say I'm very supportive of the discussion that the board had at the workshop last week. I thought it was very good. I believe that what you discussed regarding a new bond with specific language is absolutely the right thing to do for the community. I would encourage you to work on publicizing what I heard you all say in regard to all the experts said Grace Best is not a viable, what's the term, capacity for students. And you know, that Grace Best was denied a best grant because it's not a viable solution. I think it's extremely important information for voters to know that, and it needs to be publicized in writing, including citing the experts that told you that and their background and expertise. As a community member, I apologize for those misinformed or politically motivated citizens who continue to promote discord and misinformation within the district. While these citizens may have the best of intentions, they do not understand how kids learn, why kids learn, and what school boards and school districts are obligated to do for kids, the parents, and the community. As I said a year ago, when a district starts focusing on something other than kids, things don't work. I hear some people in the community talk about numbers and finance and how they can do things in a cheaper manner. Well, they can buy a cheaper car for their children, but it wouldn't make it safer. They can buy cheaper food, but it doesn't make their kids healthier. They can buy a modular, but it doesn't make their kids' education better. I learned over 60 years ago that you get what you pay for. Some people don't want to pay anything, and that's what they're going to get. Unfortunately, most of the people I know that are adamant against the district having appropriate facilities for students don't have any kids in the system, and therefore they don't have anything to lose. I trust this board to focus on kids, education, and to make the right decisions. Thank you.
All right, moving on to board member comments. Mr. Poff, can we start with you, sir?
Sure. First off, thanks to the 2 that came up and spoke. Really appreciate that. Terry Miller used to be our middle school principal and did a phenomenal job. All the parents loved him and the kids loved him. So thanks for coming out. I noticed that, Teresa, you probably won't bring this up, but your family's in the audience here, and you'll probably just ignore that. But I couldn't miss this fine young gentleman walking in as tall as he is. I've already watched him play multiple basketball games at Lewis Palmer High School, and I'm looking forward to the playoffs. So welcome out here. I know you wouldn't have said anything. Would you have said something? But also, I just wanted to kind of get to the real items here. You know, a lot of people are a little frustrated over public comments from the standpoint of there's no interaction, and I get that. Understand that this is an official, you know, board meeting and we have agenda and everything. That doesn't mean that you can't interact with the board, and I very much encourage everyone, if you have a question from a specific board member, all the board members, emails out there, my phone number, my cell phone number is posted on the website. If you call me and I'm not busy, I'm most likely going to answer, and we can have a great conversation. You can ask me all the questions that you want. I also think, you know, just in hearing these last two comments about the middle school, you know, the old phrase, out of sight, out of mind, kind of applies. I think the board needs to go over to Lewis Palmer Middle School during lunchtime, and we need to see exactly what is, you know, overcrowding at the middle school, because there are some people out on the internet, and I would be the first one to tell you some of the things that are stated on the internet are actually not true. Might be a little bit of a surprise, but some people believe the old saying, if you say it enough times, it must be the truth, and so they just keep saying the same stuff out on the internet. I think we need to go to the middle school as a board, even if we have a school board meeting at noon on a Wednesday or whatever, and the entire board needs to be there, and we need to see for ourselves, you know, what overcrowding we have. And some people are under the belief that we need a new school for growth. We don't need a new school for growth. We need a school for our current enrollment. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that right now, Lewis Palmer Middle School is over capacity. Now they say, well, that's not true, our capacity. Well, obviously, if we get more kids in a building, or if we buy more portables, our capacity goes up, and they want to look at that as saying, well, obviously the problem's solved. Understand this, we've solved nothing by buying portables other than time. That's it. So we still need to have the conversations about a new school. To bring this to closure for my statements, it has become, for me personally, extremely busy. You know, I was supposed to have retired from the sheriff's office and have more free time, and I don't have any free time. My business has taken off, and I'm traveling and doing all kinds of stuff. So I would, you know, I didn't bring anything with me tonight, but I would like to, maybe in the next meeting, resign from being secretary. And I'm sure Ms. Phillips would be more than happy. Oh, I didn't say that right, did I? I just really need to, I know I've only got 6 more months on the board, but I need to personally kind of trim down. I just bought more cattle. All kinds of stuff that's just pulling me in all kinds of different directions. So I anticipate in the next meeting, most likely asking if someone else could be the secretary of the board. If the answer is no, I'll continue to do it, but I'm sure Teresa will be there for me. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Poff. Mr. Taylor?
So I guess first I just want to say thanks to everyone who has expressed support for the volunteer role of a board member, that we do the best we can. And many call it a thankless job, but I've been thanked a lot and I appreciate it. And I appreciate getting to know people in the community that I wouldn't have otherwise. So for me personally, I'm grateful to serve on this board, and I'm grateful for those who recognize the effort. We're all human, we all make mistakes, but we do, I believe, care about the kids in the school system and so forth. Now, in our last work session, we had a pretty open dialogue about the current middle school overcrowding crisis. And I think it's time that we restore Creekside to its original purpose of being a middle school. Well, obviously, if we do that, we need to build the previously planned 20 years ago elementary school for that site. So I'm thinking of this bond, potential bond, as the Creekside Restoration Bond, because that's what it really is. We're restoring a previously used middle school for its intended purpose, which is in all fairness, the problem that our school district faces. I'm grateful that Monument Academy is moving forward with their approved project, that they've got the space, and according to Mr. Griffiths at his last report here, sounds like their financing is coming together. And I'm grateful for what that does for the charter school and that choice of school for our school district. But I do want to say a couple things. One is we're going to hear all sorts of opposition. We're going to hear that it's not a good time to do this when our superintendent is leaving. We're going to hear that it's not a good time to do this with our CFO retiring and going elsewhere. It's not a good time to do it because we got 3 board seats up for election. It's not a good time to do it for all sorts of reasons beyond what I just mentioned. The fact that the Monument School is increasing capacity in the footprint of our school district does not mean we fix the middle school problem. It, as I understand it, increases our capacity at about 300 seats at the elementary level, which is great. However, again, it's choice, it's school choice, and we don't want to necessarily assume that all parents would want to choose the Monument Academy option. So we're going to hear more and more. We're going to hear that, you know, so-and-so did this, so-and-so said that. As Mr. Poff accurately points out, everything you read on social media is not true. I read things about myself that I don't know how anybody came up with some of those interesting stories, but they did. And there are conspiracy theorists that are going to say, there's backroom deals going on. I think the only backroom deal might be the one you're not attending. But the meetings that I've been attending were organized and authorized by this board. And we talk about unity, and I think each one of us need to give serious consideration to what unity really means. Because we will fail one more time we'll fail if we don't have unity of purpose. And I'm going to end that with this. Our role is to inform, not to influence. So I'm all for fixing a current problem that should have been fixed a couple years ago, and I'm going to support it if the board chooses to do so. But I will try and do my very best to campaign to inform our community of the real situation. From my perspective, I will inform the community of the arguments against it and that perspective, because it's real to certain people, and I think it's fine for everybody to have a difference of opinion. But at the end of the day, I believe in this community. I believe this community, a well-informed community, understanding exactly what is before them, will make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Phillips?
Thank you. And Mark, thank you for recognizing my family, although they'd probably like to remain anonymous.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should have them stand.
Yes.
Would you please stand?
I'll let you know that's part and parcel of my family. I have a daughter who's 14, and I have a son up at CU Boulder who's 18. So, and it's further in my notes, but I was going to recognize Yeli Savita is our exchange student from Serbia, and this is the first time she's ever attended a school board meeting. So, to my fellow board members, last meeting I learned that we are all on board for the needed middle school, and I'd like to make a statement to the community, as we will in the coming months need your help. First, I'd like to thank those who've continued to communicate with the board, those who've emailed and spoken to us over the past few weeks, and those who've volunteered to help on a committee to hire our new superintendent, and all community members who are engaged in conversation and thoughtful pursuit of excellence for our children. Given extensive research into the matter, this board knows the need for a new school as soon as possible. We need more space for our middle school students and teachers. We have identified the breakdowns, the confusing ballot language, the lack of a Blue Book statement, a short timeline for educating our community to the immediate needs of the district, misguided information being spread and believed regarding the financing of the bond, in addition to others elucidated by community feedback and the thought exchange. Other challenges remain to getting the vote this year. That said, getting our students out of trailers a year earlier shouldn't be sidelined for administration and board turnover. The need for space for our students and staff remains, and in fact, it's increasing. We all took these voluntary positions to help staff and students, and I'm grateful to each of you for your service and for your family's time and energy. It's our job to figure this out immediately. In the past 2 weeks, I've heard teachers speak of feeling so unsupported it's time to move on. That should not be because the board feels it's somehow smarter to wait a year, unless the reason is that it would help our teachers and our students. Unless that's the reason, I think we are correct in buckling up and getting going and educating the community to get this vote passed. The time is still now, not waiting another year, and in the meantime, possibly failing our teachers and students. The new bond proposal could fail, and I recognize that is a concern for many. As a board member and as a parent in our community, I value that we currently live in a very high-performing district. That high performance is in most part due to the dedication, innovation, and motivation of our teachers in their classrooms. Of course, one interpretation of a failed bond initiative is that the community doesn't support the school and/or the administration and the teachers. Teachers, I want you to hear that this community supports the daily work you are doing. We have more legwork to do in terms of how we show that support. In the meantime, please keep communicating. I've heard a dozen or more great teachers already leaving. I wish we've had a chance to support them better and to support them earlier. Over the past 10 years, this district has worked hard to consolidate, slim down, and maximize dollars, all while holding to the high standards we in the community have come to expect. Our schools have excelled at what they do. Compensating our staff and teachers and providing the space and quality of work environment that is best practice for them requires that we as a community get behind supporting public education as a paramount aspect of our community. Not just for the families that have school-aged children or for the teachers' families. If education is what we value, then our school district should reflect this at many different levels. I urge my fellow board members and our entire community to embrace our value in public education in such a way that our teachers feel from all corners that we value what they do, how they do it, and that we support them both in and outside the classroom. I would like us as a board to continue to consider how best to compensate our teachers and staff such that they know they are so highly valued. We live in a relatively high rent district, and we have the #3 rated school district in the state. I have concerns about how our teachers are currently compensated. They are still trying to pay their bills. That was what I was going to finish with. And I would just like to thank, again, all of you for serving on the board with me, and to thank my family as well, as they are an extension of the board service. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Ms. Upchurch?
So I want to begin also, I'm going to change mine too, by saying thank you, because a lot of folks, they don't realize how much energy and sacrifice and hard work go into being a board member from our family as well, and our administrators' families. There's a lot of work goes into that, and I think people forget about the behind-the-scenes support, so thank you for being here. I don't know if I've got this. And I wanted to begin by asking that we please discuss recording our work sessions at our March board meeting. And I realized that we needed to postpone discussion until we got clarity on closed captioning. So, however, I hope that we can talk about that next month. And I was asking that we could put that on the agenda for March. And I also wanted to remind our community that we will still be hosting our March after-school ice cream social with the school board, and that's going to be from 3:30 to 5:30. We're still fine-tuning those dates to ensure we can get as many of us board members as possible there, so that information will be coming soon. And I also wanted to remind anyone and everyone who will listen from now until March of a great initiative that Rick Frampton brought to our district last year, and that's the Alorium Day Awards. The nominations are open from February 15th to March 15th, and the ceremony is April 25th and here in the Learning Lab. And this is an opportunity to celebrate those in the community, from a student to a staff member to even a dentist, who has made a significant difference in the life of a student with a disability through respect, help, and service. So I encourage everyone to nominate somebody, and I encourage everyone to attend because it's a very moving ceremony, and I'm so appreciative that Rick brought that to our school district. Thank you. I also spoke to this at our work session, but I think it's worthwhile to highlight again, and that's that our transition program assists with developing necessary tools for our impacted students needing additional support from ages 18 to 21 to progress from high school to adult life. And transition may look different from individual to individual, and our own students have been in need of some essential resources to help prepare them for their post-graduation life. Through applications, it yielded generous grants and donations, and our students finally have received those much-needed resources, specifically their kitchen appliances. So I promised to stop squeaking about that now, and we just need to ensure that they get those installed soon. I also wanted to let my board members know that at a recent Special Education Advisory Committee meeting, the Resource Exchange, which helps families with children who have intellectual and developmental disabilities in need of service, shared information on a new program that they called the Futures Program, which assists young adults post-graduation with help for pre-employment transitions, job search, and placement and support. And we as a district, along with many other districts, partner with the Resource Exchange in serving children birth and up. My own family has benefited from that service. My eldest son has even given back to the Resource Exchange through Autism Awareness Fundraising and Resource Fair. So I wanted to remind folks that there's a lot of neat things that are going on for our students that are beyond post-graduation. And we also heard from a representative from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, who offer programs and services to help post-graduation transition students to navigate a post-graduation path and career in college. And I also wanted to highlight some really cool things that we as a district are doing that we've been talking about and learning about at the District Advisory and Accountability meeting. We've been talking and hearing about various educational opportunities, some new, some improved, and of course some tried and true that our district has for our students across all spectrums, such as some pathways of our high school students have access to move forward, that whether they're college bound or they're career bound, and it's a wide spectrum, or if they're in a gap year or still exploring ideas. Students have a number of programs they can pursue, from AP courses to online courses, Project Lead the Way, Career Start, dual enrollment, and work-based learning. In addition, our district, along with others in the Pikes Peak region, are partnering with local business to expand programs such as internships, job shadowing, and they're always looking for more businesses to collaborate with. We've also expanded course options to broaden horizons and address demands of today's students. Those are such as free online physical fitness and wellness classes, geometry and construction, leadership classes, medical forensics. Our students learn from and hear from speakers that address the demands and stresses of today. For example, recently at Palmer Ridge High School, students attended a packed room who willingly gave up their lunch to listen and learn from Value Up speaker Mike Donahue. Sources of Strength program that was kicked off at Lewis Palmer High School right now has a 30-day challenge initiative to encourage healthier habits in various areas of their lives. And I bring all this up because it reminded me, as I've been reflecting, it reminded me of a slogan that my son had created and encouraged others to learn from when he was our team captain for Autism Speaks. And his slogan was pretty simple. It was "Get Perspective." And 2019 is a new year with new beginnings, new opportunities, new ideas. And I've genuinely been reflecting on how I, as one board member and as an individual and as a parent, can learn from that. How can I better serve our students, our staff, and our stakeholders? We all see through lenses and walk in different shoes. And I appreciate all the parents for opening their hearts and sharing their stories, their celebrations, and their frustrations with us as a board. I want to thank our community members who may have not even have children in our schools, but celebrate the value of good education and share their experiences and their wisdoms with us. And I really, truly appreciate the schools and teachers and staff for opening their doors and sharing their thoughts during their staff meetings with us and opening up dialogue to us. And I always aim to learn something new from different perspective, and I want to ensure our teachers, those that we entrust our children with, the ones that spend so much time and have such a strong impact on our future, deserve to have their voices heard. And a lot of good ideas came forth, a lot of questions answered, a lot of insight, and I hope that was both ways. What touched me most was the words shared from our middle school. On the things they wish that our community knew. Things such as the toll that crowded hallways and large classes have taken on the students and the staff. Something that our community has expressed many times over is the value of a community feel in school. Whether our students and parents are able to develop, people want to know that their students and our parents are able to develop meaningful relationships with their schools and educators to ensure we are reaching and teaching each individual student. Each student is different and learns different. And what I heard most often during my own campaign is the value of individuality and the ability for teachers to not teach to a test or standard, but to know a child's learning style and be able to teach to that child and make a difference in the lives of those students as they are encouraged to learn their passions and their strengths. And I truly see our teachers sharing that value and working hard to reach and teach each child. I also heard that discipline issues have increased. Being able to give our impacted student population the attention they deserve in order to grow has had to decrease, and the resources needed to give students the opportunities to explore extracurricular activities cannot keep up with the growth demands. As I've stated for many years, and from my campaign to last year's bond, and still today, when a school reaches a point where there is not enough resources, space, and time in the day, something is going to have to give. At some point, the steady 2 to 2.5% growth puts a strain on the levee, and you have to address the levee before it breaks, not after it is spilling over. That is where our middle school is, and at what point is worth putting as many children in a building as we can, and at what cost to quality education and individual understanding. And just because we can, does that mean we should? Lately, I've been told many times over to be a bold leader. Stand against the odds, do what is right. So what is the right answer here? What is best for the kids is treating them as unique individuals, working to ensure we are meeting their educational needs, partnering with their parents, and also being good stewards to the taxpayers that fund our community schools. Our approval rating going into the last bond election was 60%, and that was not a good number. Not impossible, but not good, but certainly a hill to overcome. Now the voters handed us a 32 to 68 deficit. That is statistically and mathematically not just an uphill battle, not even a mountain to overcome. So yes, I am indeed concerned and do not know that it is the right thing to, and didn't know that it's the right thing to risk losing the bond this year and thus decreasing the chances to fix our bottleneck middle school capacity by even more years. But I hope I am wrong. And we move forward boldly and against the odds in honor of the teachers, the parents, and the students who are holding on to hope and asking for us to stand with them. I will do so with all that I can and with all my integrity. And at the end of the day, so being bold also means working as a board to understand that according to all advice, no factor is more important than putting forth an initiative than establishing a deep trust between the community, Board of Education, administration, faculty, and staff. And it has to be done genuinely. And if it's not there, the chance of a bond vote demises, and no matter what else is done. So candor, honesty, respect, listening, transparency are critical components of what we can all trust and what we all deem as trust. So I hope that we move forward boldly, and I hope that we move forward with strength for our students, our staff, and our kids, and putting forth and convincing our community that our middle school is at capacity. And that's not right on the kids and the parents and the staff anymore. And finally, I want to bring this up again, as I do think it also deserves huge kudos. A few weeks ago, we experienced a weather emergency that no one, not even the forecasters of the county, had the foresight to predict. But through practice, preparation, and protocol, I'm so very thankful and impressed with how we as a district and community face the challenge. I want to thank our staff at Big Red for staying till the last precious child was delivered home, and the constant monitoring and communication. Thank you to our teachers and staff who stayed to teach and lovingly and patiently kept our students calm and safe. Our bus drivers who took Mother Nature's fury face on to get our children home safely and warmly. And thank you to our maintenance crews who worked tirelessly to plow and shove through snow and ice to reach students and staff. Thank you to parents who plowed streets, pulled cars from ditches, rescued abandoned mothers, and directed traffic. The collaboration between our district, our parents, and the community members was the truest definition of community. And while there are lessons to learn and improve on, I am proud to call this our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upchurch. I don't know that I could top that, but
sorry.
Oh, that was wonderful. No, quite frankly, I concur with all the statements of my fellow board members, and I want to thank each one of you as well as their families for the time that you take to serve the kids in our community. Much like Mr. Taylor said, quite frankly, I had a lot of the same concerns about going for bond next November. We failed miserably. We have some changes taking place in the admin building. Professionals have told us that now is not the time to do it, especially with the board election meeting. And I was pretty set on not supporting a bond going forward in November until I had the opportunity to visit and meet with a couple of our principals, especially Sean O'Connor, the principal at LP Middle School. I'm at LP Middle School every day. In the last month, I've seen 3 kids almost get hit by cars. Sooner or later, something's going to give. As we heard that building is at capacity, they had to give up. So the teachers have 1 bathroom in the entire building, and they have a 5-minute passing period. So conceivably, teachers on the top floor can't even go use the restroom during the regular day. So, these portables, they're going to add a few more classrooms, but it's not going to solve the problem. And ultimately, as one board member, I'm on here to do what's best for our kids, and overpacking our schools and putting them in portables is really not in the best interest of our kids. And more importantly, we are losing teachers. Our teachers need to know that this board and this community supports them. And by doing that, we need to listen to their wishes. I've had the opportunity to meet with many teachers, most recently, an hour before this meeting, and I hear the same thing, is that they need some help, and we need to create a new, or build a new elementary school to repurpose Bear Creek back into Creekside. That's the logical thing. And at our last work session meeting, I was very encouraged that each one of my fellow board members committed unanimously to support this bond, both with their time, money, and effort. And that's the only way that we're going to be successful. But ultimately, it's not our decision as a board. Our only decision is to take it to put it on the bond or the ballot for November. Ultimately, it's going to be you, the community members, that determine if you want to support it or not. Our role is to educate you, both the pros and cons. And please, if you have any questions, each one of our phone numbers is listed on the website. I meet with people on a regular basis to answer questions, and I think I could speak for my 4 other board members that they too would be willing to do so. So this is an effort, and there's a lot against this, but I think there's a lot for us, and I think we could pull this off. I also want to thank the individuals for the comments that were made tonight during our public comments. I won't touch on everything that Ms. Upchurch touched on, but we are very fortunate to be in a wonderful district. And yes, we have increased to the 3rd top performing district in the state. But if you ask anyone, the teachers at LP Middle School or Bear Creek, they will tell you that's unsustainable based on the capacity issues that we're dealing with. So once again, we'd ask that you educate yourselves and stand behind our students and teachers by supporting a bond in November. That is all I have. Ms. Broft?
Thank you. Just wanted to highlight a few things. I know Tiffany was able to come, but I know it happened in the middle of the day, and so many of you weren't able to be there. Lewis Palmer Middle School performed at the Colorado Music Educators Association Conference down at the Broadmoor. Did a beautiful job. It was great to see Mr. Moe, who's on his way out retiring, be able to do his last hurrah there at CMEA. Every year we've had someone, I don't know for how many years, we've had one of our bands selected to play, or one of our performance groups to perform at CMEA, which doesn't happen in every district. So we do have a very high quality performing arts program. Also wanted to let you know our second thought exchange will open Wednesday, February 13th, and it'll be open until February 24th. And the question is, and this is based on the feedback that we got in the first thought exchange, what are some important ways Lewis Palmer School District 38 can build trust and ensure confidence? So we'll see what kind of response we get to that, and we will make sure that we share that with you, and it'll be shared broadly with the community as well. I talked about this a little bit at our work session, but wanted to highlight it on this again. CRP reported to us that the cost of installing the Bear Creek Elementary modulars was more than what they anticipated and more than what they gave us in the quote for the budget that was presented to us in December. We're currently, though, working with them on that project as well as Lewis Palmer Middle School to determine some ways that we may be able to get some cost savings, because we may have underestimated the access to electrical there, and we may gain some dollars by not having to do as many hookups as they anticipated. But just wanted you to let you know that we're still watching those projects very carefully. We have ordered, or in the process of ordering, our modular for Bear Creek, and it'll be a fourplex for Bear Creek, and our modulars for Lewis Palmer Middle School, and working on some design and making sure that we can efficiently and safely install all of those. We're waiting on the Lewis Palmer Elementary and the Kilmer ones for now, because we want to make sure that our most significant needs, which are Bear Creek and Lewis Palmer Middle School, are underway and moving forward before we step into the next two. And those aren't as critical. The Bear Creek one is a custom design, so we had to get that one ordered to make sure it was delivered on time. And we don't have too much more time for the Lewis Palmer Middle School ones either. We have a little bit more time to order the Lewis Palmer Elementary and Kilmer mobile classrooms. So as Tiffany mentioned, Lorium Day is on April 25th in the Learning Center from 7 to 9 p.m. The application's open for 4 weeks, beginning on February 15th. Open enrollment. With the exception of Monument Academy, all of our K-8 schools are closed to out-of-district open enrollment at this time. The closure of the district will come with possible increase in gap between students enrolling out of Lewis Palmer and those enrolling into Lewis Palmer School District. Know that by not accepting, we are losing as well. And generally, it's a back and forth between all school districts. And so we don't have the room, and so we feel confident that we can say no to those new open enrolled students coming from out of the district, but also know that sometimes that impacts enrollment in other areas. For example, we do have room at the high schools. So by closing open enrollment at the middle and elementary school, we may lose a potential high school student too, because families may not want to separate their students. But we feel like it's the right thing to do based on where we are with our enrollment. With regard to the bond debt structure, we had talked a little bit in our work session about bringing forward some options. We did meet with Maddie, our financial advisor, last week, and she has indicated that until the residential rate is determined April 15th, she doesn't feel confident bringing us anything that it would be estimates, and we need to make sure that we're bringing you accurate information based on the residential assessment rate, as well as working with the assessor's office. So we're already talking with the assessor's office about, what are the preliminary market and assessed values, what are they looking like, and then what do they anticipate that the growth rate will be, so that we can incorporate all of that data and have a very clear picture and really bring you the bond structure options that you can look at based on what we know the residential assessment rate will be, as well as the assessed value or closer prediction of the assessed value. So for now, we will, and as we talked in our work session, the decision point now is whether to move forward with the bond and how much that bond will be. But the next step will be looking at the bond structure, but it's really probably wise at this point to wait until we have all that information until we look at it. Because otherwise we'll just have to modify it again anyway. So that's where we are with that. I think that's it. Cheryl?
And just to add on to what Karen said about our conversation with Maddie with Hilltop Securities, we do understand that you are looking towards the modified step down, so we had that initial discussion with her as well. With that, just a couple more things. Number one, a continual update on our Safe Routes to Schools grant. We're continuing to move forward on that grant. We are currently finalizing the easement agreements themselves so we can begin work on that. We are finding that as a federal grant, it is quite a long and drawn out process. At this point, it looks like summer of 2020 may be the time that we actually physically build the path. We'll see where that goes. I also wanted to highlight some of the work that Julie Steffen is doing as she helps to lead the D38 Leadership Academy. The D38 Leadership Academy is a group of primarily parents, but also community members that are just interested in learning about Lewis Palmer School District 38 so they can better help to support our students. At our next meeting, per their request, they're going to explore more about charter schools. We've invited down, and these folks have accepted for us, representatives from the Colorado Department of Education who are responsible for that choice group or that charter group, as well as representatives from CSI or the Colorado Charter School Institute. They're going to have the opportunity to walk through charter school law, different ways that authorization happens within the state, and then I'll close with a walkthrough of what our contract is with Monument Academy. So I'm excited and would just like to say thank you to Julie for putting that together. I think it's going to be great. I don't think we talk much about the Leadership Academy, but it is alive and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Chris has something.
Is it possible to ask a couple questions?
Sure, Mr. Taylor.
Sorry, I don't normally do this, but Karen, a couple of questions. How is it that Monument Academy can have open enrollment when they're at a capacity?
Because their open enrollment changes from year to year. They have people that choose not to go, and then they can open again. And so it's a fluid process, and so they will accept what they have in grade levels where they have space based on whether people have stayed with
so I
the
didn't want to put you on the spot to answer for Mr.
Yeah.
Griffin, but you brought it up, and I was like, how is that? So that's how they essentially have a waiting list every year, I assume.
Yes, and it's people that, and what we have at the end of every open enrollment period, we have a list of people that did not get into Monument Academy, and I think last year it was about 26 kids that did not get in, so that's technically their waiting list.
And if you think about it, Monument Academy has no boundaries. So by definition, every child who walks into Monument Academy is open enrolled. The question is, are they from in-district or are they from out of district? And in Monument Academy's case, I believe last I looked, about 30% were out of district.
That wasn't my question. I appreciate that a lot because that's a good perspective. My question was more about the size of the building, right? How do you fit more people in when it's at capacity?
And in many cases, they will not accept because they are at capacity. It will probably be a grade level by grade level basis, whether they have a 1 or a 2 available.
Okay, I don't want to wear that out. So during a DAC forum last year, I don't recall if it was in September, October, I participated in it. During this DAC forum, which was well agreed to be informational, answer the questions, etc., but a member of the panel decided to hijack it and try to turn it into a debate. Now in that, it was brought up that the state had some funding available for security or something I didn't know about, so it was definitely a gotcha to me. Can you follow up on what I'm talking about?
So are you referring to Monument Academy?
No, the DACA form, they were saying there's some state.
Oh, that was the grant that we talked about that we did not receive. It was that highly competitive grant.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
That is the money that they were referring to, and it was a competition among 178 school districts for a very small pot of money. That was the money they were referring to.
Well, I was surprised by it because I didn't know about it, but what you're saying is that we did apply.
We did apply, and we will apply again in the next window.
Of course, but we didn't receive it for whatever reasons.
Well, I think only 5 districts received money.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a viable thing that we're ignoring.
It's not a given, yeah, and it's not a given that we
just want to be clear.
Real quick, Chris, on that point, is it safe to say that we keep up to speed on the grants and bonds and other things that are available to us? And if it applies, we apply for it?
Absolutely. If it fits within if our district fits in the parameters of what they're looking for, we absolutely apply. Safety and security, we've applied for, off the top of my head, at least 3 safety and security grants so far this year. So yeah, we're very proactive.
We have 2 grant writers that largely volunteer their time, although they're technically some part-time employees, but that actively seek out every grant they possibly can that fits with whatever our needs are.
And like Matt, I just want to make sure that the community hears that because I know that you do those things. I just wanted to make sure it's clear.
And just one more thing, I think sometimes people forget about the grant writing process and how extensive it is. It's not, especially if you're applying for a federal grant, it can take up to 80 hours of time to complete the federal grant application. And some of the Colorado grants take, 40 to 60 hours of time to complete, and that's 2 people doing it. It's not just fill out this piece of paper and send your name in. It's pretty extensive, and it's very competitive.
Which you do invest.
Yes.
Right.
And it's year to year. So like with this security funds grant, we couldn't hire someone for that because next year we might not get the grant. So, if someone were to say, well, you could just go get this money from the state and then that would pay for our security people, that's not realistic.
And honestly, usually the grant is very specific what it will pay for. And so you can't say, this is our need, you need to pay for this. For instance, one of the ones we applied for was interoperability of communication devices. That's the only thing they were funding were radios. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question, Karen, with regard to the modular units. What is the target date? I'm assuming those would be installed over the summer, but
yes, and at Bear Creek's a little bit earlier. Cheryl, what's the timeline on that?
So Bear Creek, we were discussing that today, roughly May 5th, so that we can get it in and get it installed and get it inspected for preschool. The inspection process for preschool is extensive and takes quite a bit more time than K-12. The Lewis Palmer Middle School, we're looking at about July 5th to July 5th to July 15th, which will give us enough time to put it together and have it open for our teachers to get into it, whoever the lucky 4 teachers are, before school starts. Thanks.
Any other questions before we move on? All right, Mr. Foster, can you give us an update on the superintendent search?
You have before you in your packets the timeline and outline for that. The next important date to hit would be the 14th of February. Not only should you all remember that date, but I would suggest that that will be the month when the position will close. Right now, I believe you have 18 open applications and 4 completed applications sitting there. So by then you should know, by the 15th you should know. And then of course after that, the rest of it.
By the way, the timeline, it's in D3.
Right.
It's what? It's D3. Item D3.
Doesn't work there. So all of those timelines are there. Any questions?
Sorry for interrupting.
You
Do you
bet.
have the agenda in front of you? Is the agenda on that computer? So in other words, could we put the schedule?
Oh, the timeline's
I
right.
will have to find, it's under 3. Yeah, I know, I'm trying to find.
While you're looking for that, it's kind of lovely that it ends on February 14th, isn't it?
Oh, you did not just say.
I did not. Yes, I did.
Is board docs on?
I made an allusion to that, but nobody got it. So,
So did you find it to display?
again, it's up there, right?
No, it's not.
No, but you do have it.
You do have to do the screen change. F8.
Yeah, I did.
It should pull up a menu on the right.
Yeah, duplicate it.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Good, all right, there we go. All right. So you have that one, February 14th it closes. By 19th, at your board meeting on the 19th, we will you will go into executive session and review and screen those applications, and then on the 4th, all of the background checks should be complete, and you would announce your finalists. And from there on, the 14th and 15th are interview days, and the 18th is the day you would appoint.
And just to clarify, because I'm not sure it was clear on the timeline, you have an executive session, because that is a work session on the 4th. You have an executive session because obviously before you announce who the finalists are, you have to choose who the finalists are, because you'll choose your semifinalists for Randy to do more reference checking and work and background work, and then he'll come back with more information with you about your semifinalists that you choose, and then you'll choose your finalists based on the information he provides. So what's not in that timeline is the fact that you will have an executive session on the 4th to make that decision about who your finalists are.
And then you would have to come out of that executive session in open session and announce the finalists.
Yeah.
4th of March?
Yeah.
4th of March,
Which
yes.
is your work session date.
So the work session,
So it'll be a
excuse
work
me,
session slash
that. The March the 4th is also the question. You will spend quite a bit of time in question development that time for your questions. And that will be an open session.
Google invites for March. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr.
Any other?
Foster?
And just a quick question with regard to that. Would you like to, the structure of that meeting, because you will be spending a lot of time in executive session, my suggestion is you go into executive session, do the first part where you listen to his information, come out and make the public announcement, and then if you want to go back into executive session to develop the questions, it just depends. Otherwise, it could be very late in the evening by the time you come completely out of executive session to make the announcement.
Right.
Hopefully, we're going to learn a lot about this process on the 19th.
Yes, you will.
Right, which is exclusive.
Randy will be
But
here
just
on the
keep in
19th.
mind that there is the option to break your executive session into
On
two
the 4th.
sections.
Right.
Okay.
Which might be the easier way for an announcement to come out.
Well, I wanted to thank whoever sent out the email invites for those dates, because I was asking about it, and then they showed up in my email, and I appreciated it very much.
Kathy did that.
Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
I don't know how they did it, but I have 5 reminders in my calendar, all for the one work session on the 4th. So I'm probably not going to forget it.
So
Kathy,
back
maybe
to
number 6.
what Karen was saying, so it basically would benefit the community if we
Right, because
did the executive session.
It could be much later,
named the
and
finalists,
they
and then
may
went
want to
back and
hear
did the
who those
questions.
finalists are.
I believe Mr. Zila will be bringing suggestions for questions, so those can be worked through fairly quickly, but it will take some time to put together.
Mm-hmm.
The last sessions with interview teams took about an hour and a half, 2 hours to put together 12 questions.
And currently, we don't have a whole lot of other items on the March 4th, intending that you'd have that time for this.
Yes.
I'd be
So
in
the
favor of
19th.
that.
Yeah, so to me, it makes sense to,
Yeah.
to bifurcate them, come out, announce who the candidates are, then go back and work on the interviewing questions.
Yep.
How are we doing on the interview teams?
The interview teams have been established. Those were all established Friday.
Okay.
The email notifications were sent back, and the interview teams have been announced on the website underneath the superintendent search. They consist of building administrators, teachers. I have representatives from the teaching staff, almost every school, and then I have representatives from all of the school building administrators, and then I have parents who have participated or that in DAC or BAC or a school-based activity, and then I have 3 community members who don't have children in school but are participating.
How many are on each panel?
Approximately 8 to
8?
9. Yep.
Did we get a lot of good, did we get, how many, did we get enough applicants, or is 8?
We have 60-some applicants, so yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Between teachers and
66?
community, 60-some applicants. It was just a little over 60, I think 63. So we had a lot. There's a lot to choose from. Sadly, I had to turn more people down than I have room for. If you get above 9 to 10 on an application committee, on a committee, it just becomes laborious. Nobody gets to talk. Any other questions? Is that clear? Can I? Okay.
I was just curious.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Foster?
Nope. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Next agenda item, consider approve resolution regarding bond issue.
Would you like for me to read the resolution first?
That would probably be a good idea.
Okay. I'm probably the best one to read it because I wrote it, so.
Hey, Mark, will you just pause for a second? I need to get to the right screen. I want to follow along with you. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Lewis Palmer School District Number 38, Board of Education, resolution regarding the intent to pursue a bond in the upcoming fall election. Whereas Lewis Palmer Consolidated School District Number 38, also known as the district, in El Paso County, Colorado, is a public corporation duly organized and existing under the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado. And whereas the members of the Board of Education of the district, also known as the board, have been duly elected, chosen, and qualified, and whereas the board recognizes the urgent need to address current enrollment and future growth, and whereas the board understands the community recently rejected a bond for many reasons, including confusing, non-specific ballot language, the absence of pro statements in the election information brochure, an unclear financing plan, and unchallenged misinformation spread on social media. And whereas the board, listening to the feedback and direction provided by our community, believes a modest, specific, single-issue bond to address overcrowding in our middle school would be supported by our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lewis Palmer School District 38 Board of Education will pursue a cost-effective bond to build a single elementary school to be located next to the current Bear Creek Elementary School, and the district will convert Bear Creek Elementary School back to Creekside Middle School using district reserve funds. The board will ensure clear and specific bond language stating the bond funds will be spent only on a single new school. Any additional costs will be paid for by the district. The board will decide on the bond financing terms prior to the election, which will not include any form of interest-only payments. Any questions?
Well, I will second it so we can move on to discussion.
Well, I didn't make a motion yet.
Oh, I thought you did.
Well, I read it,
Oh.
but I would be more than happy to make a motion to pass.
Do you have to read it again then?
No. I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I'll still second it.
There you go. Thank you.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I'll start. So we put a measure on last year's ballot, which didn't pass. The intent of that was to accelerate a construction schedule and try and, if it had passed, it was going to be open this fall, according to the plan. But given the weather that we've had this winter, in all probability, it might have been late. And then those who wish would have said, how stupid was that to even think we could do something like that? However, I think there's actually extra costs in this budget associated with that accelerated schedule, because they're going to go 2 shifts, and I heard all of the things they said. So I actually believe, since we've already invested, unfortunately, in modulars, and the presentation that I observed said that would satisfy our needs for 2 years, that we should consider this bond as, rather than trying to build it from November or whatever to August, we should build it so it actually opens the following year and take the time necessary to actually get the costs as low as possible, to make sure that we do most of that construction work, heavy equipment, et cetera, in the summertime when kids aren't around. I could go on and on, but I think the point I'm making is I don't see this bond locking us into a 9-month construction schedule. I actually think we should give it serious thought to opening the following year and going about it more methodical without so much rush. We've learned from rushing, we often make mistakes or fail. Added to that comment is there is growth in our community. We just heard about this bond structure and we're waiting until we actually have the new assessed value. If we take the approach I'm suggesting, we'll have another year of growth in that assessed value, which will take that estimate that we're going to see even lower. If the growth that I'm seeing is real, if somehow it didn't happen, which I don't know why it would stop, unless, you know, something catastrophic happens, but that would tell me that the estimate, based on all the work I've seen that Hilltop does, is there would be no increase in a homeowner's tax bill if we followed that timeline that I've suggested. So for those reasons, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not, because we're saying we want to put the bond on the ballot, which I'm agreeable to, I don't know that we're locking ourselves into last year's plan, whether it's the actual construction time frame, the bond financing, et cetera. And that's all to be determined. And as you read that, I'm good, because all we're saying is we're either going to commit to this or we're not. And lastly, I'm really concerned about unity. And Mark, or Mr. Poff, you brought a script in after the bond election and you insinuated certain things. Words matter. I actually read in the thought exchange thoughts about your words. And I read with my own eyes things you've written about me. My concern, real frankly, is when does it stop? When do we just recognize reality for what it is? I have no idea what a backroom politicking or whatever term you used is. What I do know is that this board approved meetings with Monument Academy. We conducted 4 or 5 or 6 upstairs in a conference room. If that's the backdoor politicking you're referring to, that's the only thing I'm aware of. So my reluctance, and I frankly am so reluctant, unless we have unity here, and that we're not going to undermine ourselves and cause ourselves to defeat ourselves, why try? I don't want to be 0 for 6. So that's my issue beyond the bond structure. I think this unity, I agreed with the way you presented it. We have got to commit to each other to do this. But I also recognize that when he put that forth as a single purpose, he wants to make sure clearly that it doesn't include anything for Monument Academy or any other purpose. Mark has been very open and honest in his votes against the charter school. He's never wavered. He's always been consistent. So it's clear that's important to him. On the other side of the coin, all the kids in the school district are important to me. And I'm going to leave it with this question. I know with an MLO what the new law causes because we were involved in rewriting a contract. But for a bond, is there any requirement, or what are the requirements, I should say, for us to properly interact with the charter school within our school district, if at all? I just want to make sure that is addressed, and I want it on record that we are addressing, whatever that is. I don't know what the requirement is, but whatever it is, I think we should follow statute.
No, I agree with you, Mr. Taylor. We should always follow the law. So, Ms. Bruft, if we could contact Dick and just make sure that everything that we are doing here is consistent with statute.
Yes, and I can tell you that we will follow through on any meetings to let Monument Academy know that we're going forward with another bond. With the identification of a single issue, though, and one school, it does change the requirement of what we're expected to include them in, because typically you'd be including them on other things you'd be asking for, like safety and security, those kinds of things. But we'll check into it and make sure that we've
I
done
seconded
everything.
this motion because I believe in what we're doing. I just want to be clear that we put our cards on the table and we're honest with one another. I think we can gain a lot of unity if we just be honest with one another.
Yeah, we do have to let them know.
And follow statute, whatever it requires. I don't think it requires us to. I don't know what it requires.
It doesn't require us to include, it requires us to inform that we are moving forward.
All right.
I mean, the one thing that I do want to address is kind of the implication that I've always voted against Monument Academy. I don't believe that to be true. I've been very open, and that's the one thing that I've always said is, you know where you're going to stand with me, because I don't keep any secrets. I'm very open, and I said from the very beginning that whenever we added more items to this bond, diluting it, that would cause problems during the election. If you ask for one item, one bond, which is what we're talking about now, it's very clear what the public's voting on. A lot of the concerns is when you actually read the bond, it never mentioned specifically where the dollars were going to be spent. And that was a lot of the confusion of, there was a lot of people didn't even understand what that money was going to be used for. So that's the part that I didn't agree with. But I was very clear at the beginning that bonds are for single agendas. And I've said that from day one. And that's why I thought that I think the community will be a lot more supportive of one bond, one school, and nothing else. And that's where the whole motive of this is coming to. So I understand about implications of this and stuff and unity. I definitely agree with the unity. If we agree to go for one bond for one issue for this school, I think we will have 5 individuals that are all going to be on the same team for the same reason. And that was very important to me, which is why last year I actually gave that option, because I knew that we needed all 5 to support that bond. And I actually did. I compromised. And I supported a bond that I didn't really feel 100% behind, because I felt that they needed to be split out into, where people knew exactly what they were voting for. I think the biggest issue with the bond last year was the ballot wording. It was not crystal clear, and that to include but not limited business. I think we need to be very clear, and that's been shown in other bonds where agencies have been very clear on where the money is being spent that have passed. So I think that is clear, and the pro statements and on the other stuff. So that's where this is coming from. So I even wrote down here 18-month build cycle, which I'm assuming is like a normal build cycle. So along the same paths of Chris, from the standpoint of we have spent money on these portables, so I think we should do a normal build cycle for a school, which would have us utilize those portables for 2 years. And then at that point, that would be the most cost-effective transition to the new school. So I agree with that 100%.
And I wanted to add to that last thought is it also gives the new superintendent time to actually get up to speed for the construction, because it gives them time. They don't have to feel like, oh, what am I walking into? Because they're already going to feel that way to some degree. But I want everyone to know also that, I was wavering back and forth there. I was leaning against this until I made a phone call to Karen, and she committed to me that she'll be 100% behind this. And she's got 4 years of experience. There's probably nobody better to actually help run this than her, because of her position, her experience, her capabilities, etc. So after having that call, I teetered on toward the idea that this is a good idea.
I'm going to wade into this discussion just a little bit because I don't know if this will be helpful, but being a newer board member with a slightly fresher perspective and watching people on the board interact, I think I mentioned last month about aligning goals, and I think this is a perfect example. And I think what I'm hearing is, and from my perspective, actually, I think it's easier to align goals when we keep it simple and specific. And so when I hear that kids are important, we all agree on that. We can all unify on that. And we can align our goals on that. On the flip side, I think we need to be cautious about if something doesn't get included, then we are diverging from that, or somebody is not caring for kids the same way someone else is. So what I hear is, I think, and this is why I feel pretty strongly about, one school, one bond. I think keeping it simple can help us all align toward one goal, and actually can help our community align to that as well. It makes the education piece simple.
A lot of good points there. Cheryl, in conversations with Hilltop and their bond council, how many school districts in our state have passed bonds in the last 2 years that did not include their charter schools?
I believe you asked that question once before, and the answer was 0, that every single school district that had a charter school as a part of it in some way, shape, matter, or form had included their charter school within their question.
And I'm not suggesting we add it here. I'm just restating my case that I care about every child in this school district and the school system as a whole. And our chartered school is chartered under our charter. And so that was my point, not about implying that somebody didn't care about kids. That was not.
No, and I didn't mean that directed at you personally. I just meant that in a general way.
Well, the key also with this bond, one bond, one school, we're not giving any other money to any other school in the district. So that doesn't imply that we don't care about every other kid, the kids at the high school, kids at, the elementaries or whatever. It just implies we have a need. It is a very singular need for our growth. And this is our single, what you said, the simple and specific solution to solve that one problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's past due. That's way past due. Yep.
I appreciate your insight, Mr. Taylor. And I believe the polling data actually supported that we would have an increased chance of being successful if our charter school was included. That was the polling information prior to our last election. But I think there's some wisdom in keeping it simple. And as one board member, if any of our other schools were benefiting, I would definitely strongly support Monument Academy also being part of that. But since we're considering just one school, that's the direction I'm going. What's up, church?
Honestly, I think I made my points at the work session last week. Overcoming that 32 to 68 defeat is going to take a process that we. Another way to look at it is that the failure of a referendum, there are several factors, but does it erode trust, or is it a failed vote simply because of symptomatic ingrained distrust? And so it starts with us as leaders, and building trust requires vigilance and constant effort. And so our candor, honesty, respect, listening, transparency, and getting the information out there, I think as one of our speakers said, getting that information out there, that verified information out there quickly, to meet those, to address those questions, that's going to help get us over that hump. this resolution. There's some things, honestly, the simplisticness is important, that we are building, this is a K through 8. Let's essentially call it what it is. It's a campus. It's a bigger campus where we have 2 different schools on the campus, but it is a simplistically stated, it's a campus where, and those are effective and they work. And we see more school districts throughout our state recognizing that too. And I think that that's a way to simplify that language, because that's what we are. We're addressing our needs at the middle school level and giving our elementary students, all of our schools in the entire system, some breathing room. But yes, I stand in unity, and I will fight just like I did before to ensure that our kids, that we're as accessible as we can be. I don't waver from that. I do still not sure I agree that we can overcome that deficit, but I am willing to give it all I've got and hold on to that hope that we can.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we take a vote? Hearing none. Ms. Namika?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Mr. Pop?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Before we move on, Mr. Clausen, if we could, I'd like to make a suggestion on this subject. One of the things that I think we've heard is that last time the board wasn't kind of out in front of this bond. And I think one of the things that happened was we kind of relied on the administration to kind of take care of business, so to speak. And I think that kind of made us as the board kind of trying to catch up, always, you know, how does this work? How does this work? And things like that. So what I'd like to suggest, if the board would agree, is I would like for Chris and I to basically take up the leadership on this bond. I think it kind of has the dynamics of the entire board between the two of us, and present to the board our solution for this bond, either in the next meeting, and I understand there's still some variables out there that we're not going to get till April, but I would really like to work with Chris to sit down between the two of us and kind of get out in front as the board on the whole implementation of this bond, and then have Chris and I present maybe in the next board meeting, no later than the April board meeting, on our proposal on what we think would be the best bond to succeed this November. Instead of, and I don't know if this is making total sense, we rely on Cheryl and others in the administration to kind of, okay, go take care of this. I would like to recommend this time that we as a board get out and kind of take the leadership on this bond, and I'm recommending that Chris and I are the two representing the board on doing that.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Taylor?
Well, I'm going to ask Karen a question because she's the one who committed to me to take this lead. What do you think of the idea? And let me add that I'm not opposed to what Mark's saying, because I truly think we didn't champion last time like we should have. And I didn't know we could have, actually. I've learned through the process that we could have been out campaigning much more than we did.
Actually, I would say you do need to take the lead, and I think what I said is we would offer the support and communication and factual communication, because remember, we have to stick to factual communication. We can't campaign on district time. And so we would do whatever you needed in terms of supporting information. We plan to, starting next month, as a matter of fact, Julie is going to be providing you a communication update of every activity that we're doing every month that is getting information out there, misinformation corrected, those kinds of things. So we'll continue to do that. But it really, the most successful bond measures, ballot measures, are those that are led by the board versus us leading. Now, you can give us work to do, and we will do that. We'll carry it out. We'll bring information to you. We'll prepare whatever you need us to prepare. But leading the direction is actually really best pulled off by the board.
Perfect, because I heard Mark say earlier that his business is growing. He's got a lot more time commitments. He actually wants to resign as a secretary. I'm busy. I'm a volunteer. We need your support, and if we have that support, which I'm sure we will have, I'm willing.
I want to be very clear about this, as much as I am busy, which I am, this is very important to me. And I'm more than happy to take as much time as I have to, no matter how it impacts the next 6 or 7 months, to do the right thing and get out in front of this. So I'm willing to commit the time on my way out, so to speak.
And by leadership, I think what we're talking about here is being the voice of what needs to happen, setting the direction, setting the vision. Those are the things that you can do as board members for where you want to go. And then we'll support with the information and the activities and all those things as usual. But that leadership is about, this is your bond question that you're putting on the ballot. Nobody else is doing that. You are doing that. Certainly we all support it and want to make sure it's successful. But when you drive that vision as to what you want to accomplish, it's going to be a lot more powerful.
So I'd like to hear from the rest of the board, because I will commit. I've already committed in my mind that what's necessary we will do. But I would like to know that the whole board supports Mark's idea.
I support it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, but I still think it needs to be all 5 of us standing strong.
Absolutely.
I agree with it. But since both of you agreed to do so, can I add one additional item to your plate?
I take it.
You know, District 30 or District 20 did a masterful job last year, and I think, excuse me, I think we could learn a lot from them. I think it'd be wise to meet with one of their board members, perhaps their board president. And who was the member?
So the person you need to meet with is Glenn Strabe, and he is not the president now because he's about to be term limited, but he was the president during the time period when they did pass their bond. And matter of fact, I even mentioned to Teresa,
I have his
and you have
business
his
card
contact.
here. That's what I was
Great.
showing Chris. So.
And their bond language said, did not have the words including but not limited to.
So theirs did not.
Nope.
Right. So Tiffany, Mark had suggested that we report regularly to the board. So is that sufficient, though? I mean, I understand your question about unity, and we're all in this together, but I think what I'm hearing Mark say is we'll take the lead on this, and we'll make regular presentations of our progress.
And one thing I just want to bring up, because we keep getting the including but not limited, you know why that had to be there. Because we had a placeholder for $3.5 million for MA and didn't have a commitment, because at the last sort of hour, we decided to include MA in there. You have to put that in because we didn't know what MA would decide to do. And had you have not done that, you would have had $3.5 million unaccounted for to the voters, and although it appears that it's unaccounted for, you would have lost the $3.5 million if you weren't specific about how you were going to use it, or you didn't have that indicator of including but not limited to. Because I've heard that often come up. This wasn't a design of some mastermind of let's include but not limit in our bond language. It's because we did not have specific enough information about what was going to happen to that to the $3.5 million. And without that specific information, that's your only choice. To put included but not limited to.
To be just as clear, Karen, because I want to, if Chris and I are taking the lead on this, and we want to sit down, was it Dick Bump that did this?
No, it's our bond counsel, Kim Crawford.
Counsel. We can sit down and we can start a draft without locking anybody in. This is just between Chris and I.
Just you two.
And then we would present later on, so we can work out the specifics to ensure that that will not be in the next bond.
Yes.
Okay, so I think I can speak for Chris in saying that we will make sure that the bond will not have that language in it. And we will be very simple and clear as to where every penny, can we even put in there every penny will be spent on this, and if there's any extra money, we'll give it back to the taxpayers?
That's a pretty complex process.
No, I understand that, but I would love to just say that. We'll have a raffle for one person in the community that gets it back.
You know what, honestly, typically what school districts do is anything that's left, they put in a reserve fund just for that building for the next year and a half to when they realize that they don't have enough chairs or they don't have enough, it
I don't think
becomes
it's
a building reserve fund.
I don't think it's going to be an issue for us because I want to be very open with the board what my thoughts are in this. I actually want the bond to be less than what the cost is, and I want the rest to be paid for out by the district reserves. So in other words, we're telling them we know there's not going to be extra money because we're chipping in money as well, and we're going to make sure that it's district money that takes us to the finish line.
I don't anticipate you're going to have leftover money. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly. But I want to make sure that one of the points for me is I want to show that collaboration between the district that we're willing to chip in some reserve money to make this happen. So it's a collaborative goal to get this done.
Okay. All right, are we ready to move on?
So long as you guys say that you have a consensus that Chris and I can represent the board in this matter.
I think we have a consensus, Mr. Buff. Thank you. Budget priorities discussion, Ms. Wangeman?
Aha. You have in your budget, or in your budget packets, you have in your board packets 3 different groupings of school district comparables per Mr. Taylor's direction around running some district-to-district comparables. Kathy and I had a fun time putting them together just to give you a brief of how we've organized them. The first grouping is District 38, District 20, Fountain 8, and Falcon 49. They're geographically put together because we can only put 4 on a page. Then the next 2 groupings are similarly sized districts, with the exception of Cheyenne Mountain, which is both a similarly sized district and a geographically near us district. So these won't show up well on the screen, but you have them in your packet. Just a brief analysis was completed on them, looking at administrative costs and district administrative costs and school administrative costs. As you might guess, we looked quite favorable to our comparable districts. As you look through the districts, you begin to realize that different scenarios, such as is a school district in the middle of a capital construction project, that can in fact impact what you're seeing in terms of costs. In our school district, the year that was pulled out happened to be one of the years that we reworked the turf at the high school. So you see quite a bit more spent on activity spending than you might otherwise in another given year. So there's many intricacies working through all the budgets, or I'm sorry, the actual expenditures. So you see that running through. But we have them for you. I don't know, Mr. Taylor, if you'd like to go over them at all, but we did put them in your packet for you to take a look at.
So I think what I'd like to see from a budget perspective is this format. What is our budget for the budget we're working on is July 1 of 2019 through June of 2020, correct? And I'd like to compare that budget to these categories, and then I'd like to have some explanation of where we're different and where we're the same, just so that we can have a clear understanding of how do we line up to other school districts.
One thing I do want to caution us is this data is now 2 years old. So, for instance, 2 years ago, we had 2 more administrators at the district level here. Or, for instance, 2 years ago, we had not as many students enrolled as we do now. So we just need to be careful that we're not comparing growth or things like that because it was 2 years ago.
I understand. This is June 30th of 2017 numbers, correct?
Correct.
So what I'm talking about is even to our own numbers, there will be a variance.
Okay.
And so variance analysis normally defines what you just described.
Right. I just want to make it clear to everybody that these are 2016-17 end-of-year numbers, because that's all that's on CDE right now. They will actually update this in a few months, and so we'll at least have last year's.
Will it be before we finalize the budget? It's pretty close, I think.
It is pretty close. I would say that normally, yes, they will have it updated before we would finalize the budget.
And I'm not interested in you doing another variance analysis. That close to the approval timeframe. I think the key here is, does the board agree with this approach? Because what I was presented last year was a budget with 1,000 line items, and I wasn't sure how to review it because I don't want to review 1,000 line items. What I want to do is take this approach, which is more, it's not high level, but it does break down key spending categories that CDE thinks is important. And then we just look at the variance analysis and you describe, well, why is this different from us 2 years ago and or, you know, variable sizes out there. To me, it will be more informative for me and the community to understand how we stack up and why what we're about to prove is what it is.
I personally think it's a great way to make a comparison. I like it because it really is looking at things more realistically rather than saying, like you said, I don't know if we're spending too much money on pencils. You know, that's not really, it's a higher level look at how we're managing our money. So
I like it as well.
Yeah, you know, it is very clear from the standpoint when it talks about how much per student we're spending on certain items. And that's what I'm looking at is, you know, how much per student, because that's really where I think the rubber hits the road. And when you look at district administration, it shows that we're very much in line with other districts. So it doesn't show that there's this big bulge at admin or anything. In fact, it kind of shows that it's some other districts.
And just if you look at, for instance, construction facilities, that points to exactly what Chris has brought up on more than one occasion, is that we aren't really investing in capital improvements in construction the way other districts are.
Any other discussion on this topic? All right, moving on, the 2019-20 budget work.
Thank you for pulling that together.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it'll be great. I like, personally, the higher level. I think it'll get us out of the weeds and up to where we need to be. With that, you'll see some changes. Some of you have been with us for a while in the next presentation, which is per our calendar to begin to discuss what we're looking at for large purchases for next year. So I brought it up a couple of levels, and as Lori and I and Ricky and Danny worked on it, you'll see that. You have before you just basically briefly 2 years worth of what we're thinking in terms of capital reserve spending. You have the 2019 school year and the 2020 school year just in large 5-6 topic areas. I would tell you that we're presenting 2 years this year, which is a bit unusual for us. We're determining what fits best in what year. We're very, very tight, as we've talked before, about this capital reserve funds, and we're looking at the best grants. Back to your conversation earlier, we are currently writing for a HVAC best grant, a boiler.
Boiler and a roof.
And a roof, a boiler at Kilmer and a roof at Prairie Winds Elementary School. Given the shape that those two items or those two systems are in, we would like to move those up to 2019. On the other hand, Danny's not too pleased with the HVAC concerns that he has at Bear Creek and Lewis Palmer High School as well. We need a chiller, to be specific, at Lewis Palmer High School that is really at the end of the life. So we will continue to struggle with these and bring you all back a final budget as we move forward, but I did just want to give you all an update per our budget calendar as to where we're at with these two topics. Then you also have in your packet technology spending.
I'm sorry, just for clarity. This capital budget is not the cash in lieu of.
That is correct.
This is the normal capital budget.
This is the normal capital budget, yeah, and to be specific to your question, these are all large purchases for the district. For me, I've got some of them in the capital maintenance reserve fund and some of them in the general fund, but that really doesn't matter to you all. You all care that we are having some large capital purchases every year. We also have the technology spending. We're not requesting an addition for STEAM spending this year other than any dollars that we gain from reimbursement. Over and above what we currently have, we'd like to reinvest into the STEAM program. Last but not least with this, we have included the curriculum adoption cycle within the document because that's a part of the dollars that we spend that are large one-time purchases as well. So this is really just to give you all an overview of where we're going. And in the future, if this isn't quite the detail level you want, we can adjust to that as well. Any questions?
I just have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we're the format of looking at the 2 years in comparison also because, for example, curriculum expenses now aren't going to be the curriculum expenses of tomorrow. So I think it gives us an idea to look towards it. I think it's more future looking too. Future looking, is that a word? Forward thinking.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I have one question. Last year, when we looked at the budget, there was $500,000 that you had set aside for potentially staffing of the a successful bond. And are we going to do something similar again?
It's already in there.
Although it.
Go ahead, Karen.
No, that's right. Yeah, Cheryl and I already talked about that. It's the 585,000 approximately, right?
Right.
That we had set aside. We added, as a matter of fact, because you used the 500,000 toward the modulars, we added back an additional 85,000 so that we could rebuild that back up to 500 for next year.
I appreciate that, but my question then is, if we spread this over an 18-month build cycle, that impacts your budget?
Absolutely, and so yes, the plans are right now to build in that other half to get to the $1 million. But if you do that over 3 years, then that'll give us more flexibility in terms of how we build up that ongoing piece, and you'll have more one-time dollars to spend.
I have one more question. Sorry, Cheryl. Just out of curiosity, now you said that when we're looking at this, we're looking at chunks at a time, right? So what I'm getting at is staffing, budget for staff. Are we going to visit that another month?
Yes.
Or is this, okay.
Yes, and just so you know, in the budget process that Karen and I have discussed, as well as with ADCO and ADCAB, we automatically, through that site-based budget process, have staffing for growth, for student enrollment growth for the schools. We don't have it for Big Red, grounds, maintenance, but we do have it for the schools.
Thank you, Cheryl. Dr. Benton, I think you're next up for the curriculum adoption first review.
I'm actually going to bring Yvonne Johnson up as well.
I'm finding the right spot for you.
She is our learning services coordinator, and she is she's responsible for helping bring all of these forward. So she's the one that actually got to work with staff. So, what questions do you have about the curriculum adoption paperwork that is placed in front of you today?
The only question I have is how much public review have you experienced so far? How much feedback? Because it's been out 30 days or more? Something like that?
I'm trying to pull this up, but I don't know what tab it is.
I didn't put in.
Okay. Sorry. The public review process is basically where it's open for anyone to come take a look. Anyone who comes to look, you saw exactly who came to take a look. They signed the paperwork, and some of them provided feedback.
Do I have that in there?
Yes,
Should
it's
be in
at the end of the
each,
slides.
each actual, each content area has each individual signature of looking at.
Oh, this is in the next session, sorry.
So it's at the,
Yeah. Next.
and the public reviews are at the bottom of each one.
Sorry, I was looking at the previous one that Cheryl brought up.
I actually appreciated that because it helped to know if there's questions we need to help answer, such as for the science curriculum that said it would be helpful to know how this science class will compare to the current science class.
Well, keep in mind that a curriculum is not actually a course. A curriculum is actually a resource that the teachers utilize to make sure that we're meeting the standards.
So when people ask these questions, do we get back to them with those answers?
So it depends. Actually, we wait until we get feedback from you, and then we make a determination.
So basically what you're saying is these are the resources that are used by the instructors It's not what they're actually teaching in the classroom.
So they don't literally go from page 1
Right.
to page 200, correct? They use these resources, including the digital content, to be able to build, they have autonomy in how they use these resources.
Right, so there might be one section, I think it would be safe to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, in every book that you go out and look at, there's gonna be something in the book that's like, I wish that wasn't there, or that's not exactly right. And it's really up to the instructor to determine whether that's a portion of the book they're gonna even use in their instruction.
So I would give you the example of our 7th and 8th grade health.
Yeah, I was
That
gonna
is a
ask.
completely teacher-created, it's a collaborative that we actually are part of. We used some of the curriculum from Jeffco. And the idea being that we couldn't find anything, our teachers couldn't find anything, and we didn't want to spend resource dollars from the district to purchase textbooks when we didn't need them. So the teachers and Devon coordinated that effort of working to actually create our own curriculum for that. So it isn't even necessarily a book. Sometimes it's a website, sometimes it's a website membership, and you can see it all the way down to our K-5 math, which is a complete and total revision of our everyday math curriculum. So it's the whole gamut. And you can see the teachers that are on each committee that helped to put together all that paperwork. Those are their words, those are not ours.
Right, so there's a whole process that we follow, and you can see in each one of these packets for each one of them, the entire process on how that it ultimately reached community feedback on that, and then ultimately the board decides through a vote. I'm assuming this is pretty much our first reading
Correct.
of this, and then next month we'll come in and vote. So this is the time that the board should express any concerns. So let me be first. I have none.
Thank you.
I don't have any concerns either.
And the other thing I'd like to add is just a reminder that this is the board-established process that
By
we
law.
follow.
Well, our board policy.
Yes, and we follow, and so if, as John Mann used to say, if you have an objection to the curriculum, it's your policy, and that's how it's selected, is the policy that the board owns. And to date, nobody has objected to the process as a board, so it's the one we're still following.
Chris and Tiffany, any questions, comments, concerns?
No, I was curious if when we see comments like the health curriculum was a good example of where the feedback to me was very productive feedback, especially with that particular curriculum, because since that is a teacher-initiated curriculum, on how going forward we can improve or things we can make sure we're addressing, like making sure it doesn't mirror health curriculum in 9th grade, for example. So I think that that's all valuable feedback. As far as if we want to include, as far as board policy, if we wanted to ask the back to be involved, seems like that would be a board policy decision. But I don't have any concerns or questions about. I'm just saying as an example, to piggyback off of what you were saying.
Mr. Taylor?
So I see lots of initials in a couple of these. I assume that's the number of people?
The initials are you talking about
Teachers.
on the actual documents that have the needs assessment and all of that? Those are initials of everyone that worked on all of that, yes.
Within the school district?
Yes.
So I guess I'm still coming back to my original question, and maybe it's here, I just haven't seen it yet. How many out of district, that's not the right word.
Actually, we did have some folks
non-district people have reviewed this.
Well, it depends on how you define non-district. So we have some people
They're not employed by Lewis Palmer School
We
District.
had some parents that came and looked at it. And actually, each feedback sheet, if they provided comments,
show that.
is in each packet pertaining to each curriculum.
Is it fair to say that some people reviewed the curriculum or reviewed these products and didn't fill out a form?
Correct.
And then just left? Because I know in the past, and I
That's what I've done.
apologize, as a board member, I used to come in and sneak a peek at this stuff so I could be able to say, I've looked at it, but I didn't leave comments.
Correct.
You know, because I didn't have any concerns.
Correct.
So at the bottom, when you see, one or two people that have done that, thankful for them. I mean, I appreciate that they took the time and effort to fill out those forms, but we usually had them out in a public place, and I know
They were
that's,
in the community room for over
so people
2.5
could
weeks.
actually sneak in and sneak a peek, and we really wouldn't even know about it. So it's open for review.
It is open for review. We do ask people to sign. If they're
You
gonna
ask
use-
them to.
Right, if they're going to use the digital resources, because that is content that's owned by the company.
Right.
But yes, they cannot leave comments.
So
Most
the
of them
board,
don't.
so the board requirement is for so long, and I can't remember, is it 30, 45 days, 60 days?
So it's actually, it's 2 weeks.
Okay, so there's a
But-
period of time. We publicly announced it because I got the emails saying that they're for public review.
Not, to be perfectly honest, though, not very many people do come in because the process itself, I mean, we always talk about how we trust our teachers, and our teachers are the ones who select these. It's a very teacher-driven process.
And as it should be.
Correct.
I was about to make that exact comment, is that I'm not saying the community knows better because they're not educators, right? This is educators' work. I get it. Do you have any of these, and I haven't seen them all, do you have any that said conditionally acceptable or not acceptable? All I've seen so
Yes,
far is
yeah,
acceptable.
We do, we have a handful.
There's a few.
You
And
can
how do we, as a district, react to those? Do we just, just ignore it, or is it something we follow up on, or is
So
there?
it's feedback to you as a board member, that because you're the one that officially votes on the.
So I have to read every one of these then, right?
There aren't that many.
Some you can't.
I can't read?
There's some that you will not be able to read.
The
I guarantee
handwriting.
it, because I tried for a long time.
So let me just ask it this way then. This happens every year?
Yes.
Okay, so anything unusual this year?
No.
So this is pretty much the same as always. So in 3 months, when somebody out of the blue says, this curriculum sucks, or whatever they want to say, sorry, Holly, all I can say is, well, it's open for your review, and you have every opportunity to go in and make a point, whatever your points are, right? The process is this.
Correct.
Perfect.
And the only thing I'd like to add is sometimes we have people that come in looking for a specific thing. They don't review the entire document or the entire online thing or the entire book or whatever, and they're looking for something specific, either that they want to find missing or there. And that's typically where they isolate their comment to. That's really likely because the people who are the experts spend the time reviewing the entire material, whereas people that drop in, they don't have 8 hours to read the entire series and compare it. They're simply making, the time that they can to make a review, and they typically go to something that they think is important and look for whether it's there.
Our teachers go through the painstaking process of even counting the number of pictures and graphics, looking to see if they have equal gender representation. They go through a great deal to vet these resources. We spend a lot of time having them log in and take a look at all of it. So it's, I highly suggest if you have questions to reach out to some of the teachers that are on the committees, because they're going to give you a much better idea of why those resources help them meet their educational goals.
So, I'm sorry, I do have another question. Thank you, Karen, for making me think of it. So we're in year 3, is that right?
Year 3 of?
Of the 5-year
Yes.
cycle?
When we were able to recover enough funding to be able to make major
So
purchases.
we're really reviewing year 3, which is this list, and
Yes.
that's what I can find and review.
Correct.
Right, and literally the board's responsibility, if I understand it correctly, is to take the feedback that you've received for this year 3. We're gonna have another reading next month, or even approval, right, next month, is that right? And so our responsibility is just to read through this. If we have any issues, we can bring them up next time before we vote to approve it. Otherwise, we'll just vote to approve it. And what we have the opportunity to do is actually read, understand the 5 categories, and see if we need any clarity, et cetera, and then vote on it next time.
Correct.
And one last thing, I'm really pleased that we do have an actual revision cycle, because several years ago, we had kind of cut all curriculum purchases because of the economy. And so we're still a little bit in catch-up mode right now, trying to adopt for years of not adopting anything. So it's really great to see that we've actually got a cycle, and Cheryl's budgeting and all those things, and that we have the ability to do that, because that's one of the things, in addition to capital improvements that got cut during the recession, was curriculum. And so now we're in catch-up mode.
Here, the American history text that we're looking to replace has a publication date of 1995. So we're a little behind.
I was going to say.
Not much has happened in American history.
Yeah, I appreciated that. And I appreciate, too, that the teachers even give their own feedback, like, this book is falling apart. It needs to be fixed. And if you look at who is reviewing this, besides just you guys, and you look at the staff that's at each building looking at it, you can tell based on their comments, based on that they really took the time to be thorough in reviewing it. And it's not like a one-size-fits-all. It's not like we just bought from one particular vendor. We've reviewed multiple vendors to find the one that best fits the needs and the values in our community. And I think that I appreciate that. And I appreciate that folks are willing to come in and look and give us feedback of what their thoughts are, their celebrations. It's great photos and illustrations. Teacher Edition seems to have good supplemental support for differentiation. And that's community feedback in and of itself, too. So I think the process that we're going through is really a stellar process. And then us having, like you said, Chris, the final say, the final look at it and say, okay, taking all these things into account. And the expert.
Devon's amazing, so thank you very much for letting me have her on my team.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Cheryl, the enrollment dashboard.
Yes. Just briefly, you have 2 months worth of enrollment dashboards. I do believe I could put those up.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
So I saw a website that Bob was working on that has the enrollment information. I provided 2 rounds of feedback to that. Has any of the other board members looked at it and provided Bob feedback on that?
It was the website. He came and demonstrated it at a board meeting. He talked about it. And if you go to our website and you go to, so I'll show you how to navigate there right now. I gotta pull this up. You go to about, let's see, is it in there or is it in community? There it goes.
District overview.
Bob, what pull down is it in again?
Knowables, right?
Go to parents and students.
There we go. Enrollment information. So.
Enrollment data, right side.
It's pretty comprehensive.
The last 5 years.
And Chris provided some great feedback that we incorporated.
And the right, so it's a factual place because it ties out to CDE's numbers. And the reason I want to bring it up is because I want to ask for more. And I know that I asked Bob, could we get like 4 or 5 years history? And that's a lot more work.
There's 5 years history.
Oh, you've already done what I
Yeah,
asked. Oh, he's already done everything I asked.
I did that well.
Well, I can find more. But I don't want to be driving this alone is my point here. I think it would be useful if the board members would take a chance to actually spend a little time with it. I would like to see us use this as the reference point when questions come up about enrollment and capacity, because it's all here.
And we sometimes hear from community members where they say, you know, this is declining or this is, we need to cautiously look and make sure we're comparing, you know, we're not saying at the end of the year you had this many kids and now at the beginning of the year you lost enrollment, because that happens naturally. Kids move out and then by October 1 we pick up those kids again. So this is a great way to say we base all of our information on October count data because that's the data that matters. That's how we get funded. So using that as a reference point is a great idea.
Are you all good with that one?
I think we're good.
Okay. The next piece you have in your packet is the financial dashboard. Know that we're now in the last half of the year, so looking at variances and see how we're going to stack up for next year becomes increasingly important. We are continuing to look at the specific, excuse me, I can say it, specific ownership tax variance, and still I'm not liking the way that's looking. It's only about $72,000 low, but that is material. So we're starting to talk with the county assessor to see exactly what's causing it. Everything else is tracking fine. I'm not worried about our coming in on budget or close to budget at the end of the year. We are also building up next year's budget, as you might guess, as we go along. Back to the comment that Karen made on the curriculum, we are trying to put in an additional $100,000 into our ongoing budget for curriculum because we are behind. And we've got the staff now that we can begin to catch up. So it seems imperative that we continue to work on that. So I just add that comment.
Any questions for Cheryl?
This might be a newbie question, but you've been talking about grants for other aspects. Are there grants for curriculum, or are we covered budget-wise?
There are at times grants for curriculum. Unfortunately, I find that those kind of grants, and Karen may want to add to this, have strings attached. They'll come in with, here, we'll fund this for you for 1 year, but then you have to fund it for the ongoing years.
Usually, there's not a sustainability factor, and they usually aren't huge grants unless sometimes you get some huge curriculum level grants that are tied to funding for instance, you could increase your Title I or your Title II funding, and that's a federal funding stream, but those are really dependent on the demographics of your district, and even those have to be tied and accounted for in certain ways, although you have a little bit more leniency. Typically, grants that come in the form of for actual curriculum that we purchased, sometimes a curriculum company will provide us with a grant based on certain criteria or certain commitments to do it for 3 years or things like that. That's the most common grant that we get. The rest of the grants that we get for curriculum are like $1,000 here, to support you doing X, Y, Z. So it's not significant enough to count on, and it's not sustainable.
It's a great question, though.
No, thank you.
I have another question. So we talked about the budget and the way we will look at the budget. The question I would pose to the board is, would it make sense that we look at our financial dashboard in a similar fashion so we kind of get used to what the numbers mean and what we're looking at? Because this was designed, I believe, back in 2008 or 9 when we were in a recession, and so the amount of money being spent on electricity was crucial, or et cetera, right? And I'm just asking if it would be useful to the board members if we looked at this dashboard, just like we look at the budget and how we look at the CDE side, and we educate ourselves around what those line items mean, because I think, personally, that layout is very telling. And I would like to see this update kind of follow the same reporting. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it would simplify your life if you had a single reporting structure for budget, for financials, and for our dashboard.
I couldn't be more happy that you said that. As I walked back to my seat after your last one, I thought to myself, what if we started to do the monthlies that exact same way? It would seem to make it very clean.
Oh, sounds like a wonderful idea to me.
I like clean.
Clean is good. Yeah.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, next agenda item is superintendent search timeline. I think we already kind of took care of that in 8-7. Do we need to spend any more time on that issue?
No.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, if I think we're in the right place, the motion would be to approve the consent agenda as presented. I'll be more than happy to make that motion.
I'll second that. Questions, comments, concerns? Are we ready to take a vote? What's up, Church? Mr. Taylor?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I was looking at information.
Mr. Nikia?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Poff.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Mr. Mika?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Mr. Pop.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
So we'll see you on the 19th.